That was Justice Raymond Zondo's wordy and complicated way of simply saying that you now go to jail for ganja no more. You will not be taken to jail for cannabis, for using it privately anymore. That was in 2018. A lot has happened. There's a bill now in Parliament to try and regulate the use of marijuana in private spaces. It's being debated. I'm joined now by Ras Gareth Prince from the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa to weigh in on this. And so, Ras, I've been looking at this bill. It is styled as the Cannabis for Private Use Bill. I think that's what it's called, with a certain schedule that regulates Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill. Your initial impressions, does it go far enough in making you realize all of the objectives that you've been seeking over the last 2.5 decades around the use of cannabis in this country?
Good afternoon and thanks for having me. And let's say happy Arbor Week to all of South Africans. It's no coincidence that we are having public hearings in relation to cannabis in Boomplantingsweek. And we would encourage South Africans to plant as many trees as possible. But ironically, the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill says that you still can go to jail for planting cannabis. So there is a huge irony and a paradox that is so typical South Africa. Whereas the Constitutional Court was quite within their bounds to find unlawfulness only on privacy, the legislature couldn't also operate by the principle of minimalism. They had to ensure that the law that they develop must cover all of the concerns raised in the papers. So a Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill is against the laws of South Africa. It offends the idea of cooperative governance. It offends the idea of the interconnectedness and the interrelatedness of all laws. And we could have had a single holistic cannabis bill that speaks to all of the aspects: recreational, economical, commercial, social, and environmental. But what we've seen is a fragmented, disjointed bill that still proposed to put South Africans in jail, a bill that still proposed to regulate cannabis via the criminal justice system, whereas the courts have recognized that the issue of substance use and abuse is not an issue for the criminal justice system. It is a social health concern and therefore require a different approach.
Ras Gareth, part of what this bill does is answer the question of, well, if me cultivating some cannabis in my private space is not illegal, how do I obtain it? So it seeks to make provisions for adults within South Africa to be able to exchange seedlings of cannabis as long as there's no money that is exchanged, no compensation, no payment. But I want to hear your thoughts around the limits that it then introduces on the quantities of cannabis that can be possessed. For instance, in Schedule 3, talking about 4 flowering cannabis plants and 8 flowering cannabis plants per household, per dwelling. Do those sit right with you?
We want to know, who did the government consult to arrive at these figures? Most certainly not South Africans, because we will tell you that cannabis is so ingrained in our customs and in our culture that those amounts of plants would never satisfy our needs. If they consulted us, they would have known that if you want to use cannabis oil as your choice of how you want to use cannabis, then you need many, many more plants in order to make oil. Because in order to make 1 liter of oil, you require 10 kilograms of raw cannabis. So there was absolutely no consultation. And the idea of also putting upon the police the duty to come and count your plants is irrational, and it doesn't serve our purpose at all. So the lack of consultation and the fact that Parliament have gone out and they said that this is a bill that need not pass through the House of Traditional Leaders. They have said that this is a bill that doesn't impact on provinces. Now, Parliament grossly misjudged their duties and their responsibilities on that score, because cannabis is of importance to every province within this country, and they for certainly would want input into how this bill was put together, and that did not happen. So the lack of public participation and the incorrect tagging of the bill as a Section 75 as opposed to a Section 76 bill, are fundamental defects, which would mean that this bill in its form will not pass constitutional muster.
All right,
and
we'll
go
talk
back to the drawing board.
I'm pretty sure we'll continue to talk about this important subject. That's Ras Gareth Prince there weighing in on the Cannabis for Private Purposes bill. It's being debated in Parliament. Among the proposals, of course, is that for you to fall within the lines of the law, you would need to possess no more than 4 flowering cannabis plants or cannabis plant equivalent per adult, or 8 per dwelling, unlimited in as far as seeds and seedlings you can exchange without paying any money, and you would be within the law. That is once this bill has been passed. So